Creating depth in your images. In this video I'm going to show you how to create or try to bring back that 3D depth that you had when you first shot your images. Because as you know, when you take the image, you're taking your image of a 3D landscape. And then it's getting captured onto a 2D sensor. So you have to bring that 3D element back out, and that's via dodging and burning and layers and colours and everything. So what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to show you how I go about doing that. Hopefully it'll let you see different techniques. Some you may have tried, some you may not be aware of. There's nothing new with it because everybody works differently. But once you see it all coming together, you can see how it all works. I'll put on the screen just now the image that we started with. This is a 5-stitch panel that I stitched together in Lightroom and then took the file into Luminar. So it's straight from Lightroom into Luminar, and that's the file we're going to be working with. And this is the difference that it made once I had worked with Luminar in the file. It's only Luminar we've used for this, except for stitching it together in Lightroom. I'll put the raw file down below so that you can either follow along step by step or have your own edits with it as well. So I quite liked the interaction that everybody gave with the last video. So I'm going to do more like that as well. And it allows you, as I say, to edit different videos. This video may be slightly different. This is me recording the first video on the PC. So I've upgraded my system. I still have the Mac, which is over there in the background, but I'm now mainly working in PC. So anything that you see before, I would do things in Luminar that the PC can't do. So I'm now aware of these issues, if you want to call them issues. So if anything comes up with that, I'll let you know when I'm working with it. I'm still going to do some of the videos on the Mac. It depends what I'm working with. But for me, I needed more speed for videos and for other work that I do as well. So that's why I upgraded the system to a PC. Honestly, couldn't afford the new 4K Mac. So I got a spec build from a computer company down south, PC Specialist, which is faster than the new Mac at $4,000 or pounds, whatever it is, wherever you are. And it's running great. It's actually rendering my videos that would normally take on a late 2012 Mac about 3 or 4 hours. It's actually rendering them in 10 to 12 minutes, if not less. So this improves my workflow and it proves everything for me, for any clients that I do work for. So without further ado, let's dive right in and I'll show you how I did this. Okay, that's us in Luminar 4.3, and what we're about to do is we're going to try and create depth in this image here. As you can see, this is a 2D capture of a 3D world, so we're going to try and bring back that 3D depth within it. And the first thing for me, as always, is I'm going to bring out a little bit of the sky, because that's a good starting point for the tonal range of the rest of the image. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into AI Sky Enhancer. And you can see the blues coming through quite strongly there, but look at the difference that has made in the clouds. We can see all the detail here now. I'll jump back and I'll go in and I'll add smart contrast to it as well. Now this is a global edit. Then I'll go back in and I'll add some smart contrast to it as well. That's a global edit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it just subtly there at 17, and just a quick difference straight away with the two of them added. While I was in AI Enhance and I've pushed the Sky Enhancer quite a bit, as you can see, I'm actually going to push the AI accent as well. And that's going to help bring out some more of the detail in here. Back into the light, so I'm jumping back and forward to get a good base for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down some of the highlights. Not too far. We have a good gap either side in the histogram, as you can see. So these, although they look blown out, are not blown out. So we've got a lot of latitude, not too much, but we've got some latitude with this as well. For me, the blue up here is just a little too much. So again, within this first layer, I am going to go into colour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back the blues slightly. So I'm going to pull back the saturation. And everything's subtle. I don't want to go too far with this. I don't want a really cold blue within this. So what I'm going to do, again subtle, I'm going to pull this back slightly. Just checking the microphone was still plugged in there. And I'm going to pull the luminance back just a tad, just to around there. So already you can see the depth that that's created with just a few sliders. Turn off colour just now. The blue has affected everything in here. So what I want is I just want it to affect the sky, but I don't want it to affect this area here. So in Edit Mask, I'm going to use a gradient mask, and I'm going to pull the gradient mask down to around there. And I'm going to turn the mask back off. I know it's affected some of these areas in here. So what again I'm going to do is I'm going to get Edit Mask, Brush, and I'm going to choose Erase, and I'm going to turn the mask on so that I can see where it is. And I'm just going to paint over this. And I know up the top here, as you'll notice, the opacity is 50%. So what I'm doing is I'm just working with that. I'm not trying to change it in any way at all. Normally if it was on a Mac, I'd click there, hold down Shift and click there. But that for the PC doesn't work, so I'm doing all this by hand. And again, I would normally use the tablet for this. But for the sake of this video, I'm doing a quick edit just to let you see how I go about the process. I'm going to turn the mask back off, and there we have it so far. So before, after, and I'm going to keep showing you the before and after all the way through. So the next thing for me is Details Enhancer. And it's just the small details. I'm going to push them just slightly, not too much. And I'm going to check just here, 28 might be too much. So maybe to about 17, that looks more reasonable. And again, I don't want the details in the sky, so I'm going to edit the mask. Brush. This time I'm just going to paint in the details where I want them. So I'm change that back to paint, opacity 50. I'm going to take the opacity up to 100 for this, and I'm going to paint the details back in here. So there is certain areas I don't want the details in, and it doesn't matter too much about the distance, but I don't want the details enhanced in the grass. So I am just going to paint through the rocks in the foreground. And as I say, I'm doing this very liberally. If I was editing with the Wacom tablet, I'd be taking my time more with this. But the fade, because the brush has got a feather, you get away with some of this. So if I turn that off, you should just see a subtle difference. That, again, quite happy with. Next thing, we're going to be working with layers here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new adjustment layer. And in this new adjustment layer, I'm going to enhance some of this area here. So with that, and to do that, I'm actually going to use colour for this. We can see that there's greens in there. There's not as much yellows. Mainly the yellows are here, so the greens are in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the greens as a slight fake dodge and burn. And you'll see what I mean, how I go about this. Colour. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to push it to the extremes so that you see what's happening. So if I do that, you'll see the greens really popping. Take them back and it draws them right back. So I'm going to push them quite a bit, normally more than what I normally do, but just to show you this as a technique within this. Then I'm going to push the luminance of them. So that's something I don't normally do, push the saturation, but it all adds up with this image. So if I go too far, you see we get that effect, and we get greens that don't exist in the landscape. But again, this is your image, so you can do what you want with this. And then again, I'm going to use a mask to bring these out. I'll just leave it quite big just now, and I'll just paint in there the areas that I want to emphasise with this. And because we'll get subtleties within this. I'll take it down for here. I'll just paint the ridge line up here. Tiny bit there. We are going to go back in and dodge and burn this, but I'm just going to show you how to emphasize certain areas within this. I am using the square brackets to increase and decrease the brush size. Might put a bit in there as well. Okay, so what we have here is we have only applied that to certain areas, so we can now tweak that to see how it's going to affect the image. And I'm actually going to push that quite a bit with the luminance, because it looks okay and it gives me the effect that I'm seeking for in this. As I say, if we do this, quite a flat, hazy image, and so far with a few sliders, we're beginning to bring everything out. So I'll turn that back off, and this is in the colour layer. I can change the hue of this if I want slightly, but then we are playing with elements that weren't actually there. So I'm going to leave that. I'll probably push the luminance a tiny bit more. I'm going to go back up into my layers, and just so that I know what I did there, I'm going to rename the layer. I'm just going to call this one Light and Greens, just so that I know where everything is. And I'll hit return, and that renames that for me. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back the greens in this layer. And I'm working with layers for a certain reason. The reason I'm working individuals on layers, if I find the effect is too much, what I can do is I can pull it back here, and I can pull back the adjustments here. So you should see that changing just in there. That's the reason I'm working with separate elements and separate layers. So next one we're going to do is we are going to go in and add a new adjustment layer. In this adjustment layer, I'm going to darken down these greens and yellows here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring back the saturation of the yellows slightly. Go too far at first, and it lets you see exactly over your entire image where it's affecting. So I'm going to pull it back to about there. Not too much, and I'm going to pull the luminance back again, remembering it's affected this, but we're only going to paint it in certain areas. So, edit mask, brush, and we're on paint, and I'm just going to paint it in here. I'm only painting over the parts that I want it to affect within reason, but I'm doing it quite liberally. Take your time with this. Again, it's the 50% up here. So make that 100 if you want to go through it quicker, but you're better building it up within your images. And there we go. Right, so if I flick that off, see the difference straight away. So now we've flattened these two areas to give us a good working base with this. This is when we now go in and start the dodge and burn. But before that, I'm actually going to darken this area down slightly again, and I'm going to do it within this layer. So within the colour layer, I am going to go down to the Pro, and I am going to go in for an adjustable gradient. I'm going to choose the bottom, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the exposure right down, and you'll see that affecting the entire image where the gradient is. And if I choose set orientation, you can see where the gradient is. So I'm going to pull that back a bit, and I am going to move that up slightly. So that's around there. I'll stretch that up just a tiny bit more. This is the first video on the PC, so forgive me for getting used to everything. The mouse is quite fast with this. Again, edit mask, brush. This time I'm going to erase. And I'm going to erase that effect from the areas that I don't want. Yes, it's still at 50%, but I'm quite happy to work with the 50% at the moment, just to see the overall effect. Because if I do it too much, it means I've got to go in and paint it back in. I'm going to paint again at 50%, just to see. I can see me going up to the 100%, but I'd rather do it in stages and get it the way I want it than have to go back and paint in and then it ends up really, really fiddly. I'm going to take this one up to the 50%. So here we go. I have a slight fade there anyway, so that will affect that. Take that in there and paint that over there. So what we've done with this one, I'll go in and name this one right now. So this layer is rename. This one here was dark greens and grade, or gradient grad. So I'll hit return, and if I turn that layer off, you'll see the effect. So that's us built it up so far. We're now getting in for the finer details, and this, I'll say again, I would normally do with a Wacom tablet, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to just do it with the mouse. Next layer, add new adjustment layer. Straight away into the dodge and burn. I'll just take that off, and I'll go straight into this dodge and burn. Start painting. The strength is 50%. Normally I would drop it down to about 10-15%, but 10's my kind of favourite working area. So I'm just going to paint in there. I'm not going too far with this, and as I say, I would normally use the brush. Use the tablet for this, not the brush. I'd normally use the tablet, but so that the video doesn't take too long, I'm actually being very, very liberal here, because when I'm getting to paint this, I'm painting over quite large, so I'm painting over contrasty areas. I don't want to lighten them. Normally, if I was working this, I would be zoomed right in, and I would be painting with a smaller brush on the areas that I can see. But at the same time as doing this, I would be doing it at a distance so that you're not focusing in on any small areas and losing the overall effect. Up here I am going to paint in a couple in there as well, just to bring it out. And I'll paint there. I'm going to take the ridge line one down because I want that separation there. And I'll paint on there, up there, along there. Make the brush a bit bigger, again just for the purposes of this video. That and there's a bit too much for me, so I'll go into erase. I'll take that back. That's nice, so that's it, taking it back to roughly where it was. Just to around there, maybe lighten that. I'm also looking for other areas. So what I'm going to do, as I say, I would work smaller than this. This is just to give you an overall feel for it. So strength's at 10% here. I have other areas throughout this as well that I am going to lighten. And not too many, because what we're doing is we're using what we have within the image to bring out the areas. Right, in here there is light coming down there, as you can see the sun's coming in there. So I am going to take that back even further, and I'm going to take that back to about 6. I'm just going to very gently do that. I'm not going to paint that area there. You may notice it when you're doing it yourself, because I'll have the file down below for you to work with. I'm just looking to play with what we have. And I'm going to go for a before and after just to see if it works. So that's the before, and here's the after. So you can see already the depth that we've created in a very short space of time. The rocks in here now are too muted for me, so I'm going to use them and I'm going to paint in them again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the strength down to about 10, because I don't want them to break up what's going on here. But I want to enlighten them, shall we say, ever so slightly. And only painting on the areas where the light is. You're looking to use what you have and keep doing that. And I have to stress again, I'm doing this quickly for the sake of this video. I would normally take my time. It's just an overview of this to allow you to do it. Leading is in there, perhaps a couple in there, but I'm going to take that down. Because with this size of brush, I'm actually painting over darker areas and I don't want to lighten them. I could go in and darken them, but at the same time, with this size of brush, it'll paint over some of the lightened areas. So I normally work quite close and keep zooming in and out just to see where it is. So that layer there became the dodge and burn layer. So I'll rename that one as well. So we now know where we are with all the names of the layers. Let's go back to the start. Quite a flat, hazy image, warm day as you can see. We've now brought the depth back into that image. More to what I saw when I was taking the image. You'll notice as well in here, it just shows you what the weather can be like. That's a rain shower, and that's a rain shower, and that's not too far away from us. Mountain wise, where we are, I'll put a picture up now so that you have a location of where we are, and that there, for example, is Buchel Etive Moor. So we're nearly done with this. We can go in and enhance any areas. The dodge and burn, because I've put it in a separate layer and only that in a separate layer, if I think it's too much, I can pull it back. Or I can increase it back to where I applied it at. So right now I'm quite happy with what's happening so far. As I say, take your time with it if you're doing it yourself. Next thing, add new layer. This time I'm going to darken some of the foreground, but just slightly with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get into the vignette. I'm going to pull back the vignette, not too much. I'll flick that on and off just to see. Yep, subtle enough to have an effect. Now, if I wanted just the vignette just to affect down this area, I could go into edit mask and put a gradient in and just drag the gradient up, or I could drag it at an angle so that it didn't affect this corner or vice versa. But the way it's sitting just now, it actually looks okay and it seems quite unnoticeable for this. So I'm going to leave the vignette there. Rename that layer to Vignette. So now we know all the different elements within this. So we've got the vignette, dodge and burn, dark greens and grad, lighten the greens in here. Before, after, before, after. A few simple quick-ish steps to get your image to where you can see that depth back in it again. And that's the purposes of this. If you'd like to see a video of the entire process in more detail and not just a quick, relatively quick run through, put that in the comments below, please, because I really enjoy doing these and I really enjoy showing people just different ways of doing things. So if you'd like to see, this one was going to run around 30 odd minutes at a guess. So if you'd really like to see a longer, more detailed edit, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, back to this. Before, after, we have depth again. And we've managed to pick out areas where the light was. We've not used any areas where the light wasn't. We've not suddenly painted into a dark area to make it lighter. Yes, we have darkened the foreground, but the reason we darkened the foreground was to give this area more impact. If we had the dark greens there, I turn that off. You may like that effect as well. It's totally and utterly up to you. That's the handy thing about naming the layers. You know what ones you can turn off to see how it's affected your entire image, and if you want to go back and possibly delete the layer and then redo it. And you can also move the layers up and down as well. So that's us with this image. The greens I could go in and edit. They're not too garish in colour, but I'm going to leave them at that for now. Anything else I want to do, I can go in and add a new layer, a new adjustment layer. And you may see this as counterproductive by adding different layers, but you saw what I was able to do there. Just turn off the layer that I didn't want to see how it generally looked in the entire image. I now could go back in and I could go back into AI structure and I could boost this slightly. And if I turn that off, you'll notice the subtle effect. I like the effect it has here, so that's where I'm going to localize it. And I am going to use the brush option. I could use the radial mask, but I'm going to use the brush option for this. So I'm going to paint that in. I'm just check it's on paint. 50%. I am going to make it 100. So I'm going to flick that on and off. So again, we've caused your eyes to go in there even further. More detail should be added in here and possibly right through these rocks. But hopefully with this quickish video, you get the idea. And I'll leave it at that for this. Hopefully you get something from that, and hopefully you can see what I mean by creating the depth in an image. I'm sure you're more than well aware of how to do it, but I thought it's a handy video just to have for reference for anybody that does it. You'll notice that I did dodging and burning as well within it, and that's something I always do. And as I've said 3 or 4 times during the video, I normally use the pen for these edits. I use the Wacom tablet for everything. But when I'm doing the videos online, I like to get through them slightly quicker. So what you see is a rough edit of the final image for you to either follow along with or for you to learn different techniques with. So hopefully that helps at all. But I would really recommend using a tablet for this. For any type of editing at all, I would really recommend using a tablet. And as I said before, mine's is the Wacom. A couple of people have asked me what one it is I use. But what I'll do in a future video, just for reference sake, is I'll show you the equipment that I use to create the images that I do, whether that's the composites, the landscapes or the portraits. As I've said during the video, if you quite like these edits but would like to see them in a more finite form, as in it will be a longer video, and I realise that this one runs, just the editing alone runs for about 30 minutes. If you'd like to see them as a more finite edit, please put a comment down below and I'll see what everybody thinks, and I may create a longer one that you can probably watch in sections instead of a series of videos that do this. You can probably just have like a 1 hour, 20-minute video, and you can see, for example, my processes and how I go about the images. Not all images take that time, but for me to explain it and explain why I'm doing it, not just this is what you do, I think that actually helps. So if you want to see something like that, please put a comment down below and I'll see if I can get something like that arranged for you. If you've stuck with me so far, thank you very much. It's really appreciated because this was a long video. If you'd like to check out some more videos in the channel below, please help yourself. And if you're currently not a subscriber, please consider subscribing because that allows me to create more content for the channel. So that would be greatly appreciated if you want to do that. Remember, stay safe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.